Mic is on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Our journey starts now. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Takes a while for us to catch up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I got to get my Q&A mic up. I didn't do my Q&A mic yet. Have to do that. Good morning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good morning. Tenneco, Lake Forest, Illinois. Our journey starts now. Not later, but now. I have nothing to say this morning. Morning, sir. Alrighty. Little test going on
screens. Well, they're testing it so that they know that they're actually getting the. Oh, sure. Yeah. Hey. 1, 2. 2 live stream. Check, Mike. Check on the live stream. Our journey starts now. 1, 2. Okay. Oh, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. The journey starts now. Stream live from Lake Forest, Illinois. Testing the microphones out. This is microphone G1. G1. Checking the mic. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2. Test. Hey, 1, 2. Should be getting the live webcast feed at 7:39 a.m. Central Standard. Central Standard, I think. Mic 1, 2, 3, 4. Check 1, 2. No Siri 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mic check. Mic 1, 2. Check. Hey, we could just move it to the side. Oh yeah.
Hey.
We'll spike it. We'll spike it and move it. You can move it now if you want to. That's fine. Yeah. Oh, right. Terry, can you spike that mic stand? 1, 2, 3, 4. Check 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Look out, college hoops. Duke is just getting started. The Blue Devils' fabulous freshmen were everything we imagined they'd be and more. The scary thing is Duke could be better than the hype. Uh-oh. All right. 1, 2. So it sounds like Duke is going to be good. 1, 2. Is it in position right now? I'm not sure. No, it's got to go back over. I think like.
I see you. Yeah, come a little bit to the right.
Yeah.
Right.
Left. There.
Oh, right there.
Yeah.
That's where you want it? That's it?
That's the spot. Check 1, 2, 2. There he is, live. The man himself, the legend. 2, yeah, so Duke won 118-84 over Kentucky, which was apparently that's a big blowout for a college game. 118 points is pretty a lot. It seems like a lot of points. I mean, usually they're like in the 60s or something like that. But I mean, even Kentucky had 84 points, which is there was no overtime, and it's a State Farm Classic. Duke number 4 Duke and number 2 Kentucky with a lot of points. Somebody had 33 points. Zion Williamson has 28 points. So that seems like a lot. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see what else. 1, 2, 3, 4. Streaming live from Lake Forest, Illinois. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey. I'm going to find another article to read. Let's see what's going on in the NFL. This is pretty solid. Cowboys need to make big changes. Yep. Super Bowl wins in the 90s. Yeah. Okay, Jerry Jones. The last Lombardi Trophy was in the 90s. Yeah, so that was the 90s. Dallas Cowboys. I remember that. Okay. Yep, they're in bad shape now. I should probably overhaul their organization. Sounds like a plan. Yep. Let's see if I can find another article. I'm just reading stuff. I don't know. Let's see here. Here we go. Kirk Cousins. Vikings exceeding my expectations. What does that mean? Kirk, 1, 2, 3 here. Let's see here. Kirk Cousins says he'll engage in various forms of self-scouting, focusing on situational football ranging from third down in the red zone and clock management to penalties and fumbles. The goal this week is not only to zero in on the areas he and Minnesota's offense can improve upon heading into the last 2 months of the regular season, but also to rest and recharge preparing for the Chicago showdown on November 18th. Before the Vikings break for their bye week, Cousins reflected on his time in Minnesota thus far, including the 9 games he's played.
I got to reiterate it.
Okay.
Before we start. Here you go.
Okay. I think in a lot of ways, this experience has exceeded my expectations, Cousins says. When you look at it, the glass is half full. I'm thrilled about our locker room, the chemistry we have on this team, the quality of teammates, the quality of leadership we have in this organization. Certainly, we would have loved to be better than 5-3-1, but I'm grateful we're not 3-5-1. You can look at it both ways. The point is, we keep saying everything's in front of us. We could talk about the past or where we are, but at the end of the day, when you have meaningful games to be played in November and December, let's look forward and focus on that. Now, Cousins admits he was wary of things taking longer to gel within the offense than they actually did. The Vikings ranked 12th in total offense and 8th in passing, while Cousins has the 3rd most passing yards among all quarterbacks. I'm pleased with the way we offensively didn't have a slow start with a new coordinator, the new quarterback says. There was concern of mine that this would lead to a slow start, where we have really rely on our defense and special teams. This is just a lot of filler. Yeah. So the Vikings spent a lot of money on Kirk Cousins, and they've got some great receivers, but their real problem is that Dalvin Cook has been hurt for a while. So now that he is back, I would expect that Minnesota might have a different game plan for their offense. So they also have a superstar receiver in Adam Thielen who catches stuff like Spider-Man. So the Bears may have a tough matchup coming up in the near future here with the Vikings. Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate that. Let's see. Oh, here's the Packers.
Phone's on stun?
Phone's on stun. Yeah, I should probably do that. Let's see here. The Green Bay Packers. Geronimo Allison. I don't even know. It was probably another receiver. Okay. Okay. Well, they got rid of Clinton Dix, which was a mystery to me. Why they got rid of? Tim, where are you at? Tim, are you here? Check 1, 2. Yeah, okay. So the Packers got rid of Clinton Dix, which seemed like they were throwing in the towel, which is not really the case, but he was a great safety. I'm not really exactly sure why the Packers did get rid of a safety like Clinton Dix, but he was he's going to be good in his new role wherever he is, in Washington or wherever. let's see here. Green Bay, another great team that has an awesome receivers, Devontae Adams and old but good Randall Cobb. They have Jimmy Graham, who's probably underutilized, and I sorry, I just don't. I can read the articles verbatim, but it's not really. It doesn't really work out. Let's see here. We'll stick on sports. Yeah, let's see who else is in Detroit. Detroit. Now there's a dumpster fire. Wow, the Lions are really bad. This game this week is going to be really good for the Bears. We're going to have probably, let's see, last week, 10, I think they sacked Matt Stafford 10 times. I don't know, that's like getting into like 10 car accidents in like 3 hours' time. You know, if they don't, and then just talk about CTE. Holy cow. That poor guy's going to be, the next week, the Bears they're pretty tough too, so I imagine he's going to be running for his life for another week. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see here. All right, Florida betting amendments. Oh, check 1, 2, 2, 2. Okay, what time is it now? It's 7:48. How we doing over there, guys? Let's just keep talking. Okay. Yeah.
And it will be the orientations will be saved.
Okay.
All right.
Good morning, sir.
Roger here for you.
2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Check. 1, 2. So let's see what they're gonna. Yeah. Okay. So who you got on your team this week?
All right.
Yeah.
We're going to put you
Yeah. Phillip Rivers, the Chargers. I saw that. I was thinking about, it might be interesting with Melvin Gordon because Oakland's got a really bad rush defense. You saw him. Yeah.
All right. Greg's here to get Mike.
Yeah. But they score early, get ahead, play catch up, then just run the clock out, running the ball. Yeah, it's probably solid strategy there. Yeah. Well, so yeah, him. Who's Kansas City playing? I think Kareem Hunt's another one this week. I think he's going to look good. Kansas City's got a good one. Whoever the Browns are playing, the Browns are not. They have because they actually have a bad rush defense. So you can run on them. You can run on Tampa Bay, Atlanta. Yeah. Oh, Tevin Coleman. That's a solid. Yeah, that's pretty solid too. Yeah, we could do. I'd play those guys. I'd play
Okay.
Dak. Oh well, we were just talking earlier. He's.
You're done.
Here.
Good morning. Exactly, it's just easier.
Morning, Mr. Patel. It's like church. Don't want to get too close. Well, good morning. I guess good afternoon in Europe, and for those of you that are still up in Asia, good evening. Thank you for joining us today. This is our third quarter global webcast. And as you can see, I'm joined by three other extremely auspicious, talented leaders in the organization. My co-CEO, Roger Wood, to my left, Jason Holler, CFO, and then Greg Bolt, who's been leading our integration management office. This is really a first for us. This is the first time that we've expanded and extended the webcast, to the global combined Tenneco, and the combination of the Federal Mogul teams in powertrain and motor parts, and then obviously the legacy Tenneco. So welcome to the new team members. We're ecstatic to have you on board. And what we're going to do today is really talk about a couple different things. From an agenda standpoint, we're going to go through third quarter results. Now, what you'll see us talk about, and Jason and I will talk about the third quarter results as Tenneco was, because we weren't in a combined state until October 1st. However, when we do talk about the fourth quarter outlook, it'll be in the combined look for the whole business, and we'll give a little bit of guidance. We gave a little bit of guidance to the street on what we think our revenues are going to be and what our EBITDA margins are going to be. Slight difference for the Tenneco team. We're going to be talking EBITDA from this point forward versus EBIT, and I'm going to let my financial guru talk to you a little bit about why. And then Greg will walk Roger and I through some updates around where we've been since the October 1st, October 2nd announcement that we did, and kind of what to expect going forward, and then we'll draw off some Q&A that has come in over the line. So let's talk first about making sure we close out the year, the Q4. We're 1 month down, 2 to go. Results are starting to come in now. We should have a good picture from both businesses. Revenue seemed like it held up okay, but we've got to get things ironed out and nailed down. But our focus for 2018, and don't be surprised if this is also the focus for 2019 and 2020 and 2021. Revenue growth and growing that top line is extremely important. I'll share with you some news of business awards that we've received in the third quarter. Gross margin improvement. As we've talked to the Tenneco team, over the last year, the gross margin rate improvement, the conversion of that revenue to the bottom line is extremely important and is a great sign to us as, the owners of the business, but also to our investors that it's a sustainable profit machine so that every new dollar coming in converts at a better return to our investments. And then cash generation. As we've gone through and we close a transaction, we've got a bit higher leverage ratio, right where we expected it to be as we came out, maybe a tad lower, but not dramatically. And our job now is to make sure that we get the cash generated from our trade working capital, take a hard look at our CapEx, and make sure that we can pay that debt down as fast as possible. We've established goals of where we expect the businesses to be by the time we spin into two separate companies, and then what those ratios will look like when we come out. And we've communicated that to the street just to let them know, here's our plan. And so far what we've said is, what we've done. And obviously our plan, Roger and I's plan, make sure we continue to do that. So our priorities haven't changed from revenue growth to gross margin improvement and cash generation as we go forward. A couple of things on accelerating revenue growth. Really, really solid performance again. About $703 million of new business awarded. And again, this is an old Tenneco look, a legacy Tenneco look. Clean Air about $700 million, Ride Performance about $35 million. And you can see, good performance on the replacement, nearly $500 million. So regaining and re-earning the business that we currently had on platforms and programs and product lines. And then incremental, about $250 million. It's that incremental part. We have to hold serve on making sure that we get the replacement and be competitive there. And our incremental then is what is driving our top line. overall, I think we'll be, well above where we were last year from a business award perspective. And as I mentioned, next quarter we'll start adding in kind of the Federal-Mogul look there. Clean Air won 16 platforms in China. We continue to have high growth in China as that car park continues to grow. Now it's slowed down a little bit, but with new regulations and new new businesses and new platforms are coming out, we've done very well. 7 platforms in India. The India team has really capitalized on the new regulations that are going in place. We're launching now the Bharat Standard 6 or 4 business, but the Bharat Standard 6, which was pulled ahead by the India government to clean up the environment there. Our India team has done a marvelous job, an outstanding job winning business there. And then we won 2 more hybrid programs in APAC in Q3, which year to date has given us 9 new hybrid program awards. And hybrid programs are important because 32% of the growth, or 32% growth in hybrid platforms between now and 2030 is what's expected. And for the old Clean Air business and for the new Federal-Mogul Powertrain business, the content is about equivalent, whether it's a hybrid or a sole ICE powertrain. So, making sure we concentrate on that and continue to win those programs and win that content. And there are cases, especially in plug-in hybrids, where the content per vehicle is actually higher because there's different engineering solutions required. From a ride performance perspective, continue to win two more Monroe Intelligent Suspension wins, and we launched 2 in Q3. And new program launches in China and India continue to drive revenue growth. As we mentioned on the ride performance business, the elastomers business continues to grow, continues to deliver good performance from a margin perspective. Our China conventional business continues to grow and continue to give us the returns that we expect out of that. India too. When we look at where our opportunity is, and it was part of a decision that we unfortunately had to make, as the end of the quarter, beginning of this quarter, we've got to get more competitive on the conventional side in North America and in Europe. Aftermarket, North America aftermarket launched about 160 new ride control SKUs. Those are primarily loaded struts where we had fallen behind from a coverage perspective, and that created some new sales opportunities, some of which we expected, some of which maybe we didn't. So it created a little bit of pressure on the organization that we'll be talking to the team about here in the next week or so. Great growth continuing in the China aftermarket. Our team had a 44% increase. Now, it's a small base, but what's important is that China aftermarket becomes the largest aftermarket in the world by 2025, getting in on the ground floor and making sure that we establish our distribution partners and establish our customer outlets and our Monroe dealers is critical. So we've added 18 new distributors, 430 new service providers, and we've added coverage of about 120 new SKUs. What's really exciting about that opportunity is the motor parts team in China has also seen that type of growth and has been investing the dollars to make sure that we're set up, or they were set up, and now in combination with more dollars combined to bring to making sure that we're established and we're anchored in that market early so we can take advantage of that growth as it materializes, which we would expect to happen 2021, 2022 to begin. But then as those vehicles age from today, the vehicles in operation in China are about 4 years old. That's about the average age. By 2025, that'll be an average of 8, which is kind of right in that spot where we see big replacements starting to happen. So we need to make sure we're ready there. And, the aftermarket is winning new business in all regions, including North America and South America. So, the aftermarket machine has stalled out, from a Tenneco perspective, especially in North America for the last couple of years. But I think that's a market issue as much as anything else. But we're starting to see that come back. We're starting to see point of sales and out-the-door sales continue to pick up. So looking forward to better market conditions going forward. One way to make sure that as a leading indicator that we're doing the right things to grow our business is getting recognition from our customers, that we're actually providing value better than our competition. And you can see here just several examples in the third quarter. Ford gave us the 2018 Top Supplier Award for chassis in South America, Q1 Preferred Quality Award in India Ride Control. AutoZone gave us the South Africa Supplier of the Year in the EMEA aftermarket, and the Italy Business Development Award in the EMEA aftermarket. So good cross-section of recognition from our customers. those are something that we should be making sure that we're targeting, because that then gives us some validation that we're providing the value that we need to do and differentiated value versus our competition. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jason to go over the third quarter results.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Well, with that intro, you sure would expect that we had some pretty good revenue growth with all that activity, and certainly that's what we saw in this quarter. Overall, for the company, our revenue increased by about 5%, and you can see that was driven by about 6% with Clean Air, 5% for Ride Performance, and 1% for the aftermarket business. And even though that number is pretty robust in and of itself, that 5% growth has been fairly consistent growth that we've seen over the last several years. What's most impressive for the quarter is that this quarter, in the third quarter, was a pretty demanding overall industry light vehicle market. The market was actually down 2%. What's most interesting about that then is that when we went into the quarter, we were expecting an up 3% market. So the market deteriorated by 5% from the beginning to the end of the quarter. Meanwhile, our forecast held fairly flat. So we didn't see the same headwinds during the quarter that a lot of the industry saw. And I'll get into the key reasons for that. And a couple of the key reasons were within the Americas. Within the Americas, on the commercial truck and off-highway space, we saw continued strength there, over 30% growth between Clean Air and Ride Performance. Both businesses saw very robust growth. And what was great about that is we were expecting a bit more of a plateauing of that market. Last year, Q3 2017, you may remember, that was the first real good quarter that we had in commercial truck and off-highway for quite some time. The market was really flat leading up to that, and we saw a 30% growth a year ago. So this 30% growth this quarter is on top of the 30% growth from last year, really showing the robustness of that market that, even if it doesn't continue to grow like that, is at a very good level for ongoing profitability for the business. And then in the light vehicle side of the Americas, you may recall that we have about 80% plus of our overall revenue tied to pickup trucks, SUVs, CUVs. So that part of the market continued to grow, whereas the sedan market continued to be under pressure. So we had the right products for the parts of the market that were performing the best within the Americas. The other part of the issue with the overall industry was within Europe. That part of the light vehicle market was down 5% for the quarter. And you can see the Clean Air business was up 8% and the Ride Performance was down 2%. And we're still trying to understand all the elements of what was driving the overall industry down so much in Europe. But what it really comes down to is a couple of key customers, primarily for us, Volkswagen, had some real issues within the quarter. It seems to be tied in some ways to some regulatory changes that were happening in the quarter. But the reality is that customer really struggled, and we just have less of an exposure in the Clean Air side than we do on the Ride side. So Ride was impacted a little bit, but did still have some growth in the region compared to market. And then on the Clean Air side, we outperformed it quite a bit, also because the commercial truck business was strong in Europe as well. So overall for the region, we definitely outperformed the overall market. Within Asia Pacific, that down 6% on the Clean Air side is not too far off of market, but remember that includes about 5% related to the ceasing of operations, the OE operations in Australia last year. So this is the last full quarter that we'll see that year-over-year comp. So if you normalize for that, it was basically a flat quarter. China was down 4%, so the overall region was under pressure. Same point that from the beginning to the end of the quarter, China deteriorated dramatically. There's been a lot more uncertainty there than what there has been in the past. And we are more exposed to the global OEs that saw a little bit less of that impact in the region over that period. So net good performance. And then in the Ride Performance side, we continue to see good strength and growth in other areas. One real good bright spot was India, 16% growth in that market for Ride. So overall, real robust environment. Within aftermarket, growing pretty close to the overall market for the Americas. North America was flat. South America continued double-digit growth, so we continue to see, even with some currency challenges in Argentina specifically, still seeing some good business there. Within Europe, we had a couple of our customers consolidate some of their distribution warehouses during the quarter, and that is a temporary blip that we would expect to work its way through as some of that inventory is taken out of the system. And then Asia Pacific, as Brian highlighted, a lot of growth in terms of the SKUs and the breadth of our product portfolio, which drove the double-digit increases for both China and India, and then the rest of the region continuing to grow as well. So overall, again, a really good quarter from a revenue perspective. Versus the plan, fairly close in aggregate, but we saw a lot of variability there. As I highlighted with Clean Air, a lot of real strength above and beyond the plan within the commercial truck and off-highway space. So that was a key driver there. Ride Performance, that down 2% versus plan, is driven very much by the European weakness that was not anticipated. And on the aftermarket side, it's really every region had a little bit of issue, but the biggest issue by far was Europe. That down 4% was not contemplated, but in fact, we had substantial growth included in the plan. A variety of different growth initiatives just were not delivered within that period. That needs to be an ongoing focus going forward.
Well, we also had some significant pressure on Turkey with the devaluation of the lira there. I think our EMEA team did a very nice job of getting back very quickly to a euro-based denomination of business. When we did that September 1st, we saw the orders dry up quickly. And so not a huge market, but big enough to make a dent. But we are starting to see that come back now. So the currency fluctuations we're seeing in the market in Argentina, particularly, and in Turkey in that last quarter, did have put some pressure on the business, both on the top line and the bottom line.
Yeah, and there's often some contagion around some neighboring countries when that happens. As it relates to margin, as Brian highlighted, it's really important that we have that margin stability and growth, and that we flow our incremental volume on a profitable basis. Clean Air was relatively flat, up a little bit as we converted a little bit on that incremental revenue, up 10 basis points year over year. Ride Performance, all of that down 80 basis points year over year is due to steel cost increases. So as we've talked, I think now fairly consistently for the last year, as tariff-driven steel increases have flowed through the system, we don't have the mechanisms for all of our customers, especially in North America and Europe, on the Ride Performance side yet. We made a lot of progress in the quarter to get that up to about 75% now to date, and we're working on the last customer to drive that most of the rest of the way there. But within the quarter, we saw 80 basis point deterioration. And then the aftermarket, you can see the volumes, as I talked about, going up and down all over. So it's converting on those revenue changes. The volume on EMEA not flowing through at a higher rate and not having the offset, and then some mixed elements within the Americas, and then ongoing investment in SG&A for Asia Pacific. But overall, for margin, it was very consistent with what we laid out for the street going into the quarter. On the cash flow side, Clean Air largely aligned with the prior year. When you look at the working capital metrics, receivables, what we receive from our customers, payables, what we pay to our vendors, and then our inventory, we're all relatively flat year over year, still short of our AOP, but showing a little bit of improvement year over year. The real challenge when it comes to cash flow for the corporation was in Ride Performance and Aftermarket, and very specifically with inventory. Our receivables and payables were at or better than what was in the prior year, but inventory was a very significant deterioration for both Ride as well as Aftermarket. Within Ride, it was North America and Asia, and within Aftermarket, it was Europe. So all throughout the world, we have some opportunities to get our inventory levels in line with the flow of the business. Certainly, I do recognize that with the volume volatility, it's been a little bit more difficult to plan for some of these production schedules, but certainly you can see that type of year-over-year cash underperformance is dramatic and needs to be improved for the fourth quarter to close out the year strong.
Some of that, though, we did anticipate, not as good as we wanted in the plan. Remember, we had our Beijing plant shut down in China last fourth quarter, kind of overnight, even though we were a zero-emission facility. Different story, scars still felt. But our China team did an outstanding job, actually one of the best in my 30-year career that I've seen them take a plant down and bring another one and scatter the supply chain, kind of across the country without missing a delivery to our customers and no quality issues. So as we're now filling that plant, we need some inventory in place to be able to transition. I think all the assembly capacity will be in place by the end of this quarter. And then we've got a couple components from painting and welding that'll be coming in the first quarter, and then that'll be behind us, and we'll move on. The aftermarket, they just got too much inventory. So.
Before I pass it back over to Brian to wrap it up here, one thing I wanted to highlight for the Ride Performance business specifically, I talked about the changes year over year, but I also want you to step back and just take a look at some of those numbers. Let's start with gross margin at 12.3%, and you can see it's substantially below the rest of our businesses. And when you recognize that gross margin does not include sales, general administration costs, as well as engineering, that gets pretty close to a break-even business once when you add those costs in. And then step back from that further, obviously this is a global Ride Performance business, but when you break it apart, we have some businesses in there that are doing quite well from an overall profitability perspective. Our Asia Pacific business, as Brian highlighted, and not only are they managing through all that transition, but the profitability is strong. We have our elastomer business. Global elastomers are doing quite well. And then our Monroe Intelligent Suspensions is also a pretty nice profit generator for the company. What that leaves is our conventional business, specifically out of North America and Europe, that's really driving down the overall averages. And in fact, they're not profitable businesses. And so that's why we've had to take a look at the overall strategy and understand what we can do to improve that in a more going forward basis. And then you should also look at the cash flow. That cash outflow of $32 million for the quarter, certainly we're investing in some of those businesses, but it's a pretty strong cash outflow that needs to be considered in the broader, longer term as well. Brian?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, and really with the lead-in that Jason gave, we had to make some tough decisions and impact some of our team members pretty dramatically. We made the decision and announced that we were going to take our North America footprint down from 4 plants to 2, and that impacts our Owen Sound team and our Hartwell team. Those decisions are never easy when you go through those. But what has happened with the North America ride business is there's been a lot of capacity put in by other competitors, and most of that south of the border. When you think about a Saks and you think about some of the other big players that have come in, there's probably more capacity in the North America market. Now, this is total between aftermarket and OE. About half of the vehicle build in North America is overcapacitized. So put that in perspective, about 30 million too much capacity in the place. And so what happens in the supply and demand, when there's a lot of supply looking for a limited demand, a lot of pressure on price. And when there's a lot of pressure on price, you need to make sure that your costs are in line to be able to get your returns on the investment. And unfortunately, we find ourselves in a position where we've got 4 plants with only about a plant and a half of business. And the fixed cost on that is anywhere between $20 and $25 million that just goes unabsorbed. And that's just not conducive to be able to go and win new business and continue to build the business. So that was a lot of the market dynamics. So let me just make something real clear. And we talked about it in the announcement, and we talked about it when we talked to our investors. This decision had to be made no matter what we were doing, with the integration of the Federal-Mogul team. So this has been a business that's been under pressure for a couple of years, a number of years actually, and we just had to get to this place where we have to move. So both facilities will end up closing no later than the end of Q2 2020. We don't expect any impact on the team members there before mid-2019 in Hartwell and the beginning of 2020 in Owen Sound as some of those programs balance out up there. Our team will be, the impacted teams will be offered a range of financial assistance, including opportunities to transfer to other Tenneco facilities, not just the ride performance facilities, but also the broader Tenneco now that includes the Clean Air team, the powertrain team, and obviously our motor parts team. So where it makes the most sense and where people are willing and able, those opportunities will be presented to some of the team up there. The overall majority of this business is being transferred to the Kettering facility. So coming into Ohio, center location allows us to serve our customers with a bit better logistics footprint, and that's what we're going to bet on a little bit when we're fighting kind of the labor rate issue south of the border, is getting closer to our customers and be able to deliver them faster and limit the freight or reduce the freight costs. So had to make that decision, and I think the team did a nice job. I commend the Owen Sound and Hartwell team with their response. Obviously disappointing, obviously has a big impact on everybody there. But the Owen Sound and Hartwell team got back to work, and we'll work our way through it. So I appreciate their reaction to it. Very professional and very much appreciated. Q4, the one we're in now, 1 down, 2 to go. We expect in the combined look of Tenneco now, revenue growth of about 3% year over year. That outpaces the light vehicle industry production today that's expected to grow 1%. So far, that IHS estimate of 1%, they haven't been right all year. They've never been right on the upside. So it's always been reduced as we go through. So if there's going to be anything that moves there, it'll be that 1% comes down. Jason highlighted some of the things that in the overall market, the light vehicle production rate came down across the globe. And there was a lot of other pressure from tier one automotive suppliers that were actually calling off revenue guidance that they had given for the year and margin guidance that they had given for the year. And we were one of two, I think, out of the third quarter earnings announcement, I think that was right, who actually raised revenue guidance and held margin guidance. A couple things different about why others were impacted where we weren't. There's a phenomenon over in the Europe market, WLTP. Got it. Which is really about trying to get the real-world emissions and the emissions rates in diesels to match what they're supposed to do. An ongoing saga with just a couple of the players over there. Primarily hit two different customers hard, PSA and Volkswagen. From a hot end perspective, that didn't have a lot of impact on us. And the majority of our customers are already WLTP compliant, and the majority are already compliant on RDE. So we didn't have to see that. Commercial truck off highway is a difference for us. So that was a positive. In North America, where the production rates are coming down, if you look at where they're coming down and what vehicles are coming down, SUVs, trucks, CUVs are still doing year-over-year increases. Light vehicles or passenger car sedans are falling off dramatically. Over 80% of our revenue is concentrated in pickups, SUVs, and CUVs in North America. So we're on the right side of that equation. And then our aftermarket needs to grow faster, but when it holds serve and grows a little bit, that's better than a lot of other tier ones. So that diversification in our portfolio and the further diversification we get by adding and combining the Federal-Mogul portfolio really is what sets us apart. So our expected revenue will be about $4.3 billion in the combined state. So we'll take our revenue and our expectations, add about $1.9 billion in Q4 from the legacy Federal-Mogul team, and that'll give us that $4.3 billion revenue forecast in Q4. And we expect our EBITDA margin in the range of 11 to 11.4. One of the reasons why you're going to hear us, the Federal-Mogul team is used to talking EBITDA. The Tenneco team is not. As we go through the closing up and establishment of new accounting for depreciation and amortization, it's going to raise our DNA a little bit. It's just part of the purchase accounting activities that have to be followed. And so it's really that EBITDA that's we're going to be tracking from this point forward. And that'll be about 11 to 11.4%. If we were combined last year, we'd be right about in that same range. So flattish, maybe an opportunity to get a little better in the combined state. But that's putting a lot of moving pieces together. So with that, what we need to do is make sure we continue to finish these last 2 months strong, continue to drive for that revenue growth, which is going to drive our future growth, get our conversion costs in our plants the right way, and continue to improve cash. The purchasing teams in the entire Tenneco now are working to standardize terms across our supply base, the broader supply base we now have, which will free up some cash. We need to make sure that we get our payments from our customers on time. So when we deliver the right way, we should get paid the right way, and then work on our inventory levels and get that done. So there's a lot of things in there around vendor payments, making sure that our customers are paying us, and right-sizing our inventory levels. But as always, you got to do it the right way, right? You got to make sure you're making the right long-term decisions. You're making the right decisions as we kind of do business with our supplier partners. So the integrity of that whole process is extremely important. Okay? So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Greg, and we'll go through some updates of where we're at, where we're going, and what we're going to be up to.
Yeah, so we've been working pretty hard on the process of integration. We're actually about 14 months into this. I know that some of us started way back in late 2017, so this has been a marathon, not a sprint. as we've been going through this, but certainly we've hit some interesting dates lately, and we've shared this slide with you before. I think it's a good pictorial of where we are and where we're going to be. So pre-close, up until October 1, we were two separate companies. We had to continue to operate that way, but we were working together quite a bit to plan for the acquisition. So a lot of that work was happening both in Southfield and Lake Forest here. And as of October 1, we came together, October 2nd, and a few things happened on that day. One, Roger Wood became a new employee of Tenneco, so we welcomed him. And we also brought in a larger workforce than Tenneco was from Federal-Mogul, and everyone became a Tenneco employee at that point in time. Interestingly enough, because of a lot of planning that we did, these companies are already starting to separate. And obviously that's our goal, is to spin or separate sometime in 2019. We're still working on the exact date of that. That date will become more clear to us over the next couple of months as we continue to work through the process. But my guess is it's going to be in the back half of 2019 before we're ready to go. And I'll explain some of the reasons for that in a minute. But as we're already moving ahead, which is why Brian and Roger are up here today, Brian is already laying out the strategy as well as the budgets for the new AMRP organization. And Roger's been working with his leadership team, both with Patrick and Reiner, on laying out the plan for 2019 for Tenneco, which is going to be the powertrain and clean air company. So let's get into a few of the details. And I'm going to engage Brian and Roger in a bit of a conversation here and kind of go through a little Q&A with them. But, you know, three big questions that keep getting asked that we're going to kind of address here today. And Brian, I'm going to start with you. Is give us a little bit of an update on where we are with the organizational plan, how the leadership team's coming together. I know we've made a lot of announcements lately, but just give it a little from your perspective.
Yeah, so about 3 weeks ago, maybe, really announced the L1 of the organization, just so that we're all on the same language. The L1 are the kind of the direct reports to the CEO. So my staff, Roger's staff, you'll hear us refer to L1. The L2 then are the direct reports of our direct reports. And so everybody on my leadership team direct reports at the L1 level have been named, all on board. 3 of them joined and they're on their 7th day. And so we've already told them they're behind and they need to go fast.
I agree with that.
So, you know, if you look at the makeup of that team, you know, so if you take the my 15 direct reports and myself at 16, kind of a broad mix there. 4 of those 16 are, you know, motor parts leaders that came across. You know, Brad with the OE and not we announced. We've got Andrew Sexton, who's leading the EMEA region for the aftermarket. We've got Brian Osterland, who's running the underhood and maintenance group from a product side. Craig Frohock from chassis product side. So good 4 leaders there. We've got Bruce Ronning, Legacy Tenneco leader, who's running the Americas. And then we brought in 4 outside leaders with broad experience and deep experience in the organization. We've brought on Jay Kunkel, who is going to head up the APAC region for the aftermarket, but also take corporate responsibilities, the senior presence on the ground there in APAC, which is important because that is going to be one of the major growth platforms for the business. So Jay joins us with deep experience in Asia, and he joined us November 1st. 2 areas that we need to get a lot stronger in, manufacturing and supply chain. We brought Ernie Keith on board to lead that part of the organization, to drive standards and drive speed and lean practices, getting to the leanest supply chain in the industry. If I think about Scott Usitalo, new Chief Marketing Officer, we've got a lot of brands under the roof now, and we need to make sure that we build those, fortify those, and align those around the globe, and he'll be instrumental in making sure that we drive the growth platforms for the aftermarket. We had Chris Brathwaite join us as the new communications leader for the business. Brings a lot of passion, energy, and great ideas to the team. And then, you know, we've announced Khalid before, but relatively new, so I guess we're at 5. Khalid Awada, who's the Chief Human Resource Officer, joined us 60 days ago. We're aging him in dog years quickly. And then the rest of the staff, you know, really is the legacy Tenneco, the corporate staff. And so you think about Brandon and Rusty and Elizabeth, and I'm going to piss somebody off because I'm going to miss him. Jason, yeah, that guy. I'm sorry.
Could be a draft pick for you, Roger.
So, if you think about the 16, 4 motor parts leaders, 5 kind of new leaders to the team, and the remainder are the legacy Tenneco leaders. So I think a good mix, good cross section. Really pleased with the makeup of the team. A lot of interactions over the last couple of days. L1 named, L2 we met the last 2 days, so I think we're about 85-90% there. So you should be expecting to hear here in the next couple of weeks the L2 organizations for my executive staff.
Great, Brian. Roger,
Yeah.
5 weeks in the job.
5 weeks in the job, and
How's the recruiting going?
And a couple of things happened on October 1st. I started work and realized vacation was over, and the next morning this noise started ringing at 5:30, and I thought, what the hell is that? Right? So I had to set an alarm clock again. But I tell you, I couldn't be more excited about the organization and the opportunities that we have ahead of us in the new powertrain company. From an organizational structure standpoint, we're working on that. Obviously, Patrick and Ryan are in place. They're running their organizations, and we're going to look much like what is already familiar to you. We're going to run 2 business units, the Clean Air business unit and the Powertrain business unit. But we're going to take advantage of the synergies between us. And when I say synergies, I mean growth-type synergies that we can utilize some of the product technology capabilities over on the Powertrain side for Clean Air's benefit, and we can use some of the process technologies that we have in Clean Air over on the Powertrain side. So we're really excited about getting into that, and Patrick and Ryan and I have been talking a lot about that. We need to fill out the rest of the L1 team, and Jeff Bowen has come on board a couple of weeks ago, and I welcomed him on board one day and said, hey, next Sunday we need to leave for Europe because we're going to be touring a bunch of plants, and I think I'd like you to be there with me. So he came on board and is running fast, much like Khalid is over on this side of the business here. But I expect that by the first quarter, sometime early in the first quarter, we'll probably have named most of the rest of the L1 team. It's difficult to name an L2 team without having the L1 in place, but that said, I think and believe that there's a lot of the L2 members that are in the organization already somewhere that would come and populate that L2 section. So we haven't moved too quickly on that because we need to get that L1 in place for them. But as I said, I don't expect the entire L2 to come from the outside because I think we got a lot of team members on the inside that will be aligning in there. A lot of that corporate support function exists in the company, and we'll be able to utilize that talent for what we need in that L2 section. So that'll come shortly after we get the rest of these L1 folks in place, CFO and general counsel and CIO and those type of positions. Once they get filled, a lot of those L2 people that are already in the organization will line up in the appropriate section below those. So I'm really excited about it, and we're working hard on it to go as fast as we can go to get that in place so that we can get our 2019 plan in place and then execute in 2019 like you all have been executing in 2018 and move forward with the company.
So, Raj, you mentioned you were in Europe last week, I believe, and I know you were visiting facilities and been visiting them here in the States as well. What's been your first impressions?
Outstanding. I couldn't be more excited. I keep saying that, I know, but it's true. I just every time I visit a facility and every time I meet the folks in the facility and understand how they're running their business and the enthusiasm and the excitement that is embedded on both sides of the business here, I get excited about that. So I've been to a technical center on each side of the business, the powertrain side as well as the Clean Air side. We went to several plants in Europe last week. I was at a plant in Texas earlier this week. So I visited quite a few facilities on both sides of the business. And while there are certainly differences that we can take advantage of and learn from each other on both sides, the similarity that I see, which makes me really excited, is the enthusiasm of the people and the excitement that they have to get together in this new powertrain organization that we're forming and start moving forward. So That's probably by far and away, Greg, the biggest impression that I've got taken away from it.
Sounds like you're going to put some miles on the next 6 months.
I think so.
Yeah.
But it's been fun. It's been really, really fun.
Good, good. Brian, I know we were in Skokie a month ago. We had a
Yeah.
chance to view that facility, but what's been your impression on some of the other places you've been?
You know, Skokie, obviously, I've been there a couple times now. Really, really impressed with the team there. Obviously, been into the Southfield offices to see the support staff and the team there, and then got out to Smyrna, the big DC there in Tennessee, and also got to my first brake plant, Smithville brake plant. Never saw that process before, and you know, one of the things, and both Roger and I grew up as ops guys, so you know, shop rats, and having grown up in that way, you can always get a feel for how a plant and how a team is working together just by walking on the floor and talking to the people. There's the smile factor, right? Do they look you in the eyes and are they smiling, or are they looking at their feet and wishing you'd go away? Most of the staffs are making sure they usher us out quickly when we go. But I've been very, very impressed and continue to be impressed, and I've shared this with Brad and the rest of the leadership team. I think the leadership team in motor parts and in powertrain have just done a remarkable job of setting the business up. We're more alike than we are different. The values consistency is extremely good to see. And they got some real strengths in their culture that we need to bring to Tenneco. And I think we may get, a thing or two maybe on the Tenneco side that we can build off of. But the collaboration and the truth speaking in motor parts is something I think we need to bring more over to our side, the legacy Tenneco side. And then, we'll get a little bit operationally edged here as we go with the rest of the team. But I've been really impressed and really enjoy going to see the broader team.
Last question, and I know there's a certain IT organization that anxiously awaits the answer to the what's the name of this AMRP company, and looking forward to the answer to that. But as you're thinking about employee engagement, we think about the vision of both of these companies, the values that we're going to live by. I suspect the values won't change too much because I think the values of both companies are sound. But Brian, why don't you start a little bit? How are we doing on the naming of the company and the story that we're going to tell about this new AMRP organization?
Well, it's been, I think the naming thing has been called the Iavanelli Initiative because I got this IT guy who's constantly just saying, so where are we at? Where are we at? Where are we at? So we've narrowed down to a name. We're checking to make sure it doesn't offend anybody in any part of the world. Also making sure nobody else has it, because that would be a bit of a problem. But we've narrowed in on one. It does live up to my first rule, which was no stupid names. So we're looking for it. By January, I think what you should expect is we'll have something better to refer to this business as than AMRP. And I think it's going to help us set the stage for the story very well. Visions, values, brought a broad cross-section of a team together yesterday from all the different regions and all different parts of functions and legacy of both teams to really start defining that. I think, Greg, to your point, there's not a lot different in our values. Maybe we can bring them to life a little bit differently as we go, integrity being first and foremost. If we could only have one, that would be the one. And we actually challenged the team, and the team challenged themselves a little bit. I kind of look at this mission, vision, values thing as like some 1960 textbook that says thou must have a mission, value, vision, values to be like a real company. Values for sure, right? But this mission, vision thing, I'll be honest with you, I can't recite ours. And the company I worked for 20 years, I can't remember theirs. So I don't know that. So we just challenged and say, how about what if we just say, what's our purpose, what's our ambition, and then here's how we expect our teams to behave in the marketplace. And so instead of 3, let's go to 2, and whether it's purpose, ambition, or whatever we call it. But this is why we're around. This is what we're going to concentrate on. This is who we want to be when we grow up and be known for. And here's how we expect the team to interact with each other, our customers, and the communities we live in.
Good. Roger, I know 5 weeks again. I'm going to remind everybody we're 5 weeks into this and we've got part of the team together. But How's it coming together? Because I'm sure the analysts, the street wants to understand too, what's the vision for the Powertrain Clean Air Company?
They do, and they ask me quite often. Actually, they asked me on October 4th, where I thought the margins could go in the company. And I actually told them on that day, and this is truth. They said, everybody makes a joke of it all the time, but quite literally, I haven't been at the headquarters building, so I don't know where the men's room is. So let me find that, and then I'll tell you about margins. But that said, obviously our name is going to be Tenneco, and we're really, really, really anxious and proud about that. Tenneco has a phenomenal name on a worldwide basis, all over the world. But the meaning of Tenneco to the worldwide investors and customers and employees is about the Tenneco that was before we did this combination of the companies, and that is the Clean Air Group, the Ride Performance Group, and the Aftermarket Group. So now we brought a really, really, really important piece into this Tenneco umbrella, if you will, the powertrain of Federal-Mogul. And there's an awful lot of historical values and historical norms embedded in the powertrain organization. So what we're trying to do from a branding standpoint is continue the Tenneco name. We're going to do that. But from a branding standpoint, we're trying to make sure that we can pull some of those really important legacy feelings, if you will, out of the powertrain organization and embed them with the Clean Air side, so that we have a branding that reflects what the new Tenneco will be. And we're working on that. We've had a couple of meetings with some folks to help us out with that. We've got another one coming up here at the end of the month. And same as Brian, in January, we'll have an opportunity to kind of pull all that information together. And while we won't have a new name like the Brian's group will have, we will have a new set of branding, if you will, that'll better align the new Tenneco name with what we have going forward. So we're excited about that.
More to come. More to come. Let me just give you a quick update a little bit on what the integration office is doing, or I like to call it the separation office instead of the integration office, because that's clearly our objective here. Just 5 key activities that I'm going to cover today, but there's a lot more going on. Really affects the Lake Forest and Southfield teams primarily the functions. But 5 things. 1, we got to create the legal entities. As you can imagine, we're 2 different companies. Now we got to create 2 different companies. So we got to set the legal entity up for one reason, for tax. But we also have to assign every asset, every person, every piece of equipment, every plant, and every liability that we have to one of those legal entities. And that all has to be done before we can spin. So there's an awful lot of work that goes into that, and in some cases we're actually inventorying things. Last week we started inventorying warehouses. Brian said, hey, why don't we just go out and ask if there are any warehouses we're not sure or aware of. We ought to get those on a list somewhere so we make sure we get those put into the right companies. Question keeps coming up too, what about pension plans? That question comes back to the HR team quite a bit. What about my pension plan? We have over $1 billion worth of pension liabilities. We have to assign those pension liabilities to both companies. So safe, they're safe, they just have to be assigned to the proper legal entity. And that's really where it comes down to in-country separation. So once the legal entities are set up, every country, every location has to decide what goes where, okay? And everything has to be assigned, and that has to be done, again, before we spin. So an awful lot of work going on out there. There's a project manager in 18 different countries. We have 18 different countries on Tenneco's side that have to separate, and we have 11 on the Federal-Mogul side. So there's a very large work stream that's at work there, and a lot more people get involved in that. We also have to separate our systems. Brian mentioned, and I mentioned IT before. IT is probably the one of the most complicated things we have. We have over 1,000 applications we've identified between the 2 companies. We have to clone about 85 different applications so that the companies can actually run. So a fair amount of our restructuring cost is actually going to our IT separation and cloning efforts. We love IT. We like to come in the morning, turn on our laptops, make sure it works. But when we spin, we got to make sure that we can look, the companies are separated, and we can go forward. So a lot of activity there from the IT team. So probably be a good month to hug your IT person. Appreciate who they are.
There's something you don't hear very often.
Yeah. I'm out of the HR business now. I could suggest you hug somebody. HR is also separating, so we're working through all the benefit structure, especially here in the United States. So we have a lot of activity going on with that, especially right now. So we've got some work to do there. We've got to assign every single person to the right company, and you can see that. We hope to have that done by the end of the year or the beginning of 2019. And then Jason's got a little bit of work to do to make sure the financials of the 2 companies can be reported by the time we spin. So he's got to go through with the IT team supporting him and his team as well. But there's what's called financial carve-outs and making sure that we can separate the financials and that by the time we spin, Brian can report out the financials of the AMRP company and Roger can report out the financials of Tenneco. So a lot of work, which is why it's probably going to spin at the back half of next year. The last thing I want to talk about, and just one more thing, the facilities overlap. We're very much aware, and we've made an inventory of the plants, both on the Federal-Mogul side as well as Tenneco, that have, we call it entanglements. So Kettering is a good example. We have a clean air plant right in the center of Kettering, and we've got to figure out what to do with that. Because if that's an AMRP plant, ultimately, what are we going to do with that focus factory that sits inside Kettering? That's one example. And we have somewhere between 25 to 30 examples of that where we've got to split that work up. So that's also being done and being planned for.
But Greg, in those cases, I mean, Roger and I's commitment here is to disrupt as little as possible. So even if we're under one roof, it doesn't mean we can't split out and have rent on both sides to make sure that we disrupt and change as little as possible as we go. So we've got plants in motor parts and powertrain that are entangled a little bit. You go down to Brazil and Argentina, we've got a ride performance and a clean air plant. So it's more frequent than one would suspect. But there's a lot of ways that it's not going to change the day-to-day life of the overwhelming majority of our plant teams.
Yeah, you're going to hear the term TSAs, Transitional Services Agreements, and that's what Brian's talking about. We'll have TSAs between the companies for a period of time to make sure we minimize that disruption. I want to talk about synergies for just a second because I think this is kind of an important topic for all of us. When people hear the word synergies, they often think of the fact that we've got to rationalize certain positions, certain people, and I'll certainly talk about that in a minute, but it's more than just the people side of the equation. We made a commitment to the street that we would find at least $200 million of EBITDA and $250 million of working capital. Internally, we've set our targets a little higher than that to make sure that we achieve those targets. I'm going to start over on the right-hand side with working capital initially. It is about cash. It's about unleashing the cash in this company. You heard Jason talk about the fact that our cash performance in the third quarter wasn't where it should be and what it could be. This is all about doing that and standardizing the terms with our vendors, giving net 90 days to all our vendors if we can, or better. And on the inventory, we carry a tremendous amount of inventory. And when you think about an inventory, especially finished goods inventory, when it's just sitting on the shelf, that's money locked up and apart that we can't put to work. We can't put to work in buying new companies. We can't put it to work on investing in Tenneco. We can't put it to work on reducing debt. So we want to have as minimal inventory as we possibly can. I'd say optimal inventory for both the aftermarket and the OE. And in truth, there's at least $1 billion worth of opportunity if we became world-class with our inventory. So we've kicked that number around. That's not going to happen next year, but it's certainly a huge opportunity for us to relieve that debt that we have that some of you have also asked about. On the synergy side of the equation, there's more than just the people side of the equation. Most of the synergies, in fact, are coming from our infrastructure costs as well as working with our vendors to bring our purchase price down. In other words, we have a bigger buy now as a larger organization, so we can go to our vendors and we can talk to them about giving us better pricing. So that work is being done by a purchasing organization. I can tell you they're doing a great job. They got off to the races on day one after we closed and started talking to our vendors, also on standardization of terms. And there's some really, really good progress there from the purchasing organization. The one that probably creates some of the most anxiety among the organization is the position overlap, or where we have redundancy among the positions in the company. And so what I want to talk about that for a minute is we're doing as much as we can within the HR function to avoid having to lay people off. And the way we've done that is kind of two things. One, as people leave, whether they retire or decide to leave the company, we're trying to look at every single job to make sure that whether we could take that job as a synergy and not replace it or not. And we've already achieved over 100 or 200 positions that we've just taken a look at positions that we're not going to backfill it. And that by far away is both the cheapest synergy and the least emotional ones that we can take. The second thing we've done is we've set up an external if you go to our website, there's a site. When you go into it, you can see all the positions now that are open at Tenneco. So what we've tried to do, the HR team's done a really nice job of identifying where the open positions are that we're going to fill, and making sure that's visible to both the legacy Federal Mogul employees as well as the legacy Tenneco employees. So if you haven't visited that site, you should do that because it's an important part of our process to minimize the impact on people. However, we are going to have a difficult couple of months here as we start to work through some position overlaps, and there's kind of two things I want to share with you today. First of all, there's going to be a small event next week, and when I say small event, it'll be a restructuring event starting next week that we will finish up by Friday. Our commitment to you is that by the end of the first quarter, and we've talked to our board about this as well, Roger and Brian are on board with it, by the end of our first quarter of next year, we want to have everything as much as we possibly can done. So we will likely have one or two additional restructuring events, probably one in January and one in the middle of March. But our goal is that people will be notified by the end of March if notification is required. As you know, in some parts of the world, we have to actually talk to works councils, and so we'll begin those conversations in March. But our goal is to make sure people are notified, the vast majority of the positions, so we can put this behind us, settle the organization down, and we can move ahead. So I know that's a difficult message to hear. We're excited that many of the synergies are not people-related, but obviously we've talked about the fact that we have three corporate centers going to 2, and we've got to rationalize that in order to set the companies up for success. So again, difficult challenge, Brian, but I think it goes back to the question of values. Our goal is to make sure we do it with integrity, we do it with respect, and where we have to impact people's jobs, as Brian mentioned, talking about the situation in the North America ride control, we're going to provide financial assistance to people, either through severance and outplacement and making sure we take care of our people as much as possible. Good news for us is the unemployment rates are pretty good around the world right now, so our confidence is high that people can find work. This is one of those economic downturns where everyone's getting laid off, so work becomes more difficult. But again, it's never an easy decision that we have to make, but it is part of the process that we'll be going through.
Yeah, let me Bill. So the end of March is the no later than date. So you don't all have to hang out and wait till March 31st. So people will be being talked to about filling roles in the L2, L3, L4, L5 organizations, but by both Roger and I commitment that we made to each other for running the business, but also to the board, is that by that end of first quarter, everybody will know where they're going to be situated, and I think that's just right. It's that doesn't mean everybody's potentially leaving March 31st. For those that we're going to ask to stay on that may not have a long-term role, we'll make sure that there's the right discussion around that. And we've frozen all open positions across the organization. So looking into that website to see where the open positions are, please express your interest. Unfortunately, we're not mind readers. So if there's something you see in there that makes sense to you, our goal is to place everybody. We don't want to sit out there and say that we had to let some people leave the team, and then 2 months later, 3 months later, we're out having to hire on the street. So that is not that's not acceptable, and that's not our goal.
And I, if I could just weigh in just a little bit, that's one of the things that's driving the sense of urgency, if you will, to over on the powertrain side of the business, the Tenneco powertrain side, to get this L1 in place so that we can identify those that are already in the organization for L2 to fill that corporate role. We know we got some great talent throughout the organization, and so that's part of what's driving the sense of urgency that we had on a previous slide to get this L1 team in place.
All right, so we're approaching the end of the hour, but we do have some questions from employees that have come in. So
we can run over. They don't shut us off, do they?
No, we're good.
Okay.
So this first question comes from our facility in Monroe, and it kind of dovetails on what you were just talking about. In light of the recent announcements regarding the closing of Tenneco's plants in Hartwell and Owen Sound, will there be comparable closings of FM facilities and a large reduction in personnel on that side as well?
Yeah, so as I mentioned as we were talking about that decision, this has nothing to do whether we're bringing the Federal Mogul team into the fold. I mean, this isn't because we got extra facilities in Federal Mogul. I mean, one of the things that was especially intriguing and attractive about the combination of the two groups is we're highly complementary. We don't make the same things. And so, this is a product line and this is a region that we have to make this decision. It'd be true if we didn't do a transaction. So what I hope that isn't out there is that there's some belief that there's a tit for tat here. We're going to make the decisions for the product lines to make sure they're the most competitive in every region of the world. And if we've got to take a look at, we'll be taking a look at every product line, as we should, every day we come to work, just to make sure that we're making it the most competitive.
The next question comes from our facility in Milan. Since the announcement of the merger, there has been a movement to lower almost all of Tenneco's U.S. benefits to be more in line with their peers. With the benefits dropping to be more in line, what is going to be our edge going forward to be able to continue to attract and retain better than average talent so we continue to be great and avoid slipping to a lower level?
Brian, would you like me to take that question?
That's why I was looking at you.
I thought so. So a two-part question, I think, is in there. One is what happened to the benefits in the U.S.? Let's remind ourselves this is a global webcast, so 2/3 of our employees don't really know what this is about, but 1/3 of our employees do. And so we'll just answer that question quickly. The second half of that question is really about employee engagement. So on the benefits side, when we did our due diligence, we saw that the benefits between the two companies were pretty different. And so when we sat down with Roger and Brian, we took a position of what if we started with a blank sheet of paper and we created competitive benefits for both organizations so that we put ourselves in a competitive position so that later on we don't have to change benefits or we would have to move on benefits. It'd be nice to do it once and not twice. And so, yes, there was some changes. And I happen to know the gentleman who asked this question, and he had probably a bigger negative impact than many other employees did in the sense that his retirement package changed, his health care plan changed, and his vacation plan changed. And there were about 300 to 400 people that had that significant impact to them. The vast majority of the U.S. employees' benefits got better. We improved the employee contributions for retirement. We added scholarship programs. Healthcare is going to be a challenge no matter what, guys. The U.S. is going through an election last night. You saw that going on. Healthcare is a big topic. Healthcare is going to just continue to drive us crazy because inflation rates run 2 to 3%, but healthcare runs anywhere from 7 to 10%. So it's always going to be a mountain we've got to climb every year. The other side of the question that the gentleman asked is, okay, now that the benefits have been neutralized, why should I work at either company, Tenneco or the aftermarket? And we talked a little bit about the mission vision. It really goes to employee engagement, or the employee value proposition. Why should I work here? And I don't know if you guys want to take a shot at it, Brian or Roger, but you're both here. You're both staying here. And I think there's a compelling reason, at least I do, of working for this company.
I'd love to take a shot at that because, I've said a couple of times how excited I am to work here. And the plants that I visited and the tech centers that I visited, the enthusiasm that I saw in those plants and the products that we're working on, the competencies, capabilities that we have as an organization are just are unbelievable. I've been in a couple of world-class organizations before coming to this world-class organization, and the things that I see here are no less than anywhere I've been in my life. As a matter of fact, there's some capability that we have that I think are superior in a lot of ways to that. What we have to do, and what I tried to do last week and while I'm out visiting tech centers and plants, is talk to the folks on the floor, talk to the folks in the business, the engineering folks. And we've had some incredible conversations about what they can do and the excitement they have and how they feel that they can affect the direction of what's going on in the world in the automotive industry, if you will. That's what Greg was referencing in terms of what we're trying to bring into the brand so that our brand reflects that kind of excitement that people can align with and be excited about working here. On a benefits perspective, we have to be competitive, but the conversation we had is we really want to treat our people really well all over the world. But as an organization, we have to be competitive or we simply won't be here for the long term. So we tried to balance those two things. And on the side of why you should work for Tenneco or the Aftermarket Ride Performance Group is that enthusiasm and excitement that we can build for people coming into the organization to really make an impact on the direction of where these two companies are going. That's why I think it's a compelling argument.
Yeah, maybe I'll build off the benefits side of it and get into the engagement side. One of the things that was very important for both Roger and I as we know that we're going to split into two different companies is that we don't have another benefits event as we split into two companies. So the intent is to do it once and then those benefits then carry on as they are, whether we're together or not, from a split perspective. The other thing that was also important, and I don't know that it was abundantly clear, but I think it was mentioned in in the literature is we also took a purposeful approach to if you make more, you pay more. And what's very important is to the people who are on the shop floor and making the products and delivering the products, whether it's the front line of anything we do, is that it remains affordable for them and their families. So that if you make more, you pay more was kind of a anchor into one of the things we wanted to make sure that we got. Healthcare is a challenging topic and will continue to be. And if you say, well, will the two companies ever be the richest benefits part of the in the marketplace? No. Will we be competitive? Absolutely. But the part very important of Roger and I's job is to make sure you clearly see the opportunity for the companies and why we're excited about working in the companies, leading the companies, casting the vision for what's going to be, and what that means for each individual in each organization around why it's a great growth opportunity and a job security opportunity for us, and what we have to do to make sure that those things all come true. And so that's a very big, important part of our job and a lot of work that's going into right now so we can cast that vision and hopefully get everybody as excited as we are for both sides of the organizations.
We got another question here, this one from Southfield. If the aftermarket Ride Performance Company's headquarters is in Illinois, what AMRP functions, if any, will be in the Southfield building?
Yeah, so I'm obviously not being as clear as I want to be. The corporate headquarters for the new company is here in Lake Forest. The regional headquarters for the execution of the businesses for the Americas will be, in Southfield. Belgium is kind of where we're both anchored down right now for Europe, and Shanghai we're both anchored down there. So the big regional headquarters will be there. So we want as much of the work as possible to be done as close to the business as possible, as close to the market. Where we can get scale off of back office and shared services is what you'll see. From a corporate perspective, personal belief, if it's more than 100 to 125 people, no matter how big you get, it's too big. Where we will pool resources like IT or tax or any of those things, that's to get the right leverage off of that scale and concentration and expertise. Those will be consolidated. But we also have corporate employees scattered around the world, again, to be closer to the markets where things move out. So from an overall perspective, our OE business, global OE business with Brad's leadership is in Southfield. The Americas aftermarket is in Southfield. We've got the chassis group, which mirrors almost exactly the OE group. So there's still a ton of work that's going to be going on there.
We have one final question. It's out of Grass Lake, and it's for Roger. What is the meaning and vision of pure play relative to the future Tenneco Powertrain Company?
Sure. That's a great question. When we talk about pure play, we talk about an understanding that the marketplace has as to what business that we're in and how they would like to be affiliated with that business. So a pure play powertrain supplier in the automotive industry, if you will, is a company who is focused on powertrain components in the automotive industry. And I know it sounds simplistic, but that's really as simplistic as it is. So if there are investors out there that would want to invest in a powertrain OEM company, we are a pure play. We don't have other pieces of the business. We don't make refrigerators. We don't make other things to where if they want to invest in the refrigerators, they won't invest in us. But if they want to invest in OE business, in the powertrain side of the business, they will invest with us, and they have the opportunity to do that. One of the issues that we had talked about for years, and as Brian was running the business before I came on board with Tenneco, one of the things that we had were investors that would talk to us about, well, geez, I really like your aftermarket business, but I don't want anything to do with that OE business. Or I really would like to invest in OE because I already have investments in aftermarket, but you don't give me the opportunity to do that. By splitting the company the way we're splitting it into a pure play powertrain company, and it allows people to do what they want with that pure play or not do it if they don't want to invest in that. But that's the reason that we call it a pure play, because it's meaning we're in a business that people can easily understand.
Yeah, and inside operationally, we don't have to make decisions. Well, I'd really want to grow the ride performance and aftermarket side, but I also know I got to keep feeding clean air. So we don't have to make those decisions. The businesses are creating their own cash, and then making sure that they're reinvesting back into themselves. So it really does help the focus from an overall growth and performance perspective too, and gives the investors a choice. I'm excited about both of them since I'm going to be a shareholder in both.
As will I.
Good? All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. As always, if you got more questions, please get them to us. We can't answer questions unless we know that they're there. So please, take the time. We'll get back to everybody as soon as possible, and I look forward to seeing more and more. Roger does too. More and more of the team over the next quarter, and we'll see you in January.
Thank you.
Thank you.